Good evening. Welcome to the December 20th Village Board meeting. This meeting is now called to, well, we actually called it to order. We've already been taking a tour, so we're just going to begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
Trustee Levin?
Present.
Trustee Bazemore?
Present.
Trustee Quezada?
Present.
And Mayor Garrity.
Present.
Thank you. This evening, we have the public hearing in the matter of the continued public hearing and text amendment to the zoning code, chapter 270. Corporation Counsel?
Thank you, Mary Ann. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. When we last had the public hearing on December the 6th, this board had asked that a particular issue be referred back to the planning board with regard to the issue, the acreage issue. There was a planning board meeting last night on December 19th in this very room. There was an extensive discussion on that particular issue. We do have representatives here from Cardinal McCluskey and from Executive Properties, the owner of 145 North Highland. The discussion at the meeting was of various ways that Cardinal McCluskey could accommodate the 1 acre minimum requirement which is set forth in the proposed ordinance and zoning text amendment. And based upon those discussions, the planning board made a determination that it was not going to make any changes with regard to the proposed ordinance, and which, as I have indicated previously, the planning board was in support of. Unless the folks from Cardinal McCluskey want to say anything, I think that everything with regard to this text amendment has been indicated. As I said, there were discussions last night with the planning board with regard to ways that Cardinal McCluskey could accommodate or reach the 1 acre minimum, be it through an easement, be it through licenses. That's something that Cardinal McCluskey is going to have to work on themselves when they come back to the planning board with their application. But other than that, the planning board is of the view that the 1 acre minimum is appropriate, and that was its recommendation, and they did not see any reason to move from that recommendation. So that's where we are. And unless there's anyone here who has anything to say with regard to that,
Well, the floor is open for anybody who would like to
Right.
comment. There we go.
Just very briefly, Madam
Wouldn't want to
Mayor,
miss a chance.
members of the board, we would like to thank Corporation Counsel for his assistance, and certainly the planning board for having the discussion with us. As mentioned, we believe we can make it work as is, and we appreciate your time and consideration of this matter.
Thank you.
my recommendation at this point, Madam Mayor, would be to close the public hearing and just to close have an application motion to close the public hearing.
Does anybody want to make that motion to close the public hearing? We're not voting anything beyond that.
No,
We're just
that's
closing
correct.
the public hearing. We've heard from everybody that wanted to weigh in, including the planning board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Abstain.
We'll leave them alone.
All right.
Thank
To
you.
the end.
Right.
That will bring us to mayor's and trustees' announcements.
Great. Well, I just, for folks who are viewing this and are not in the room, we started our evening a little earlier than usual, taking a tour of the building, and we're going to get to that later on in the meeting. And I just want to say, Trustee Quezada, we did our big farewell to you earlier in the month, but this is actually your last planned meeting for the year. So you've already handed in your parking tag. You're really not planning to attend a lot of meetings in the last 11 days of the year. But But this was one of the concerns that you had as a priority, was to upgrade and do some renovations to this building. So I'm very pleased that we were able to have that conversation tonight as we look forward to next year, and to be able to have you be part of that conversation. So I look forward to that later on in more detail. And I also want to say our friends in the town had a very exciting bit of news last night. We are aware that Councilwoman Jeffrey left her position on the town board when she took a position with the county DA's office. And last night, after doing a number of interviews from interested candidates from around all of the town board appointed Jackie Shaw to serve as the new councilwoman. I believe it's a one-year appointment, at least for this point. It'll be up for election next year. We, particularly John and Rita, already know Jackie Shaw because she has served as a town representative for a number of years on the Recreation Advisory Board, so that gives her a good foundation to build from, and we look forward to working with her in this new capacity. And I will revisit a topic that we have discussed in this forum or in our board meetings, but more in the rest of the world, which is the SALT deduction. We're really not entirely sure what the federal government is going to allow for. So anybody who pays their state and local taxes, it may be the case, and some people have interpreted it to be the case, that if you pay certainly your school taxes, which are due ultimately at the end of January, but it's perfectly appropriate to pay them now during 2017 so that you could take them as a deduction. The village taxes have been assigned to the warrant on Monday. They've been dated for this week. They are in the mail. If you show up at the treasurer's office tomorrow and say, what are my village taxes? I want to pay them right now. You are welcome to do that because they have been dated for this year and they can be paid this year. Many people believe you may have the option to deduct them on your 2017 taxes, and it appears that the federal government may not allow for that in whole or in part going forward, but we cannot offer you tax advice. So if this is something that you want to have, you are welcome to pay your taxes early and then talk to your tax advisor on what that really means. So have I hedged that enough?
You are completely correct. What is very clear from the IRS is that you can't prepay your income taxes.
Yes.
If you were looking to do that. That they've clearly come down on. You're not permitted to do that and to take the deductions in the year. But for state and local, you really need to talk to a tax advisor and to see, because you get different advice from different folks.
And my understanding from the tax receiver in the town is that some folks have been attempting to find out if they could pay their county and town early, and that those bills have not been generated in 2017, so
Right.
that appears to not at all be an option. But the village, if you have the ability and the interest, you have the option until noon on Friday, December 29th, to pay in person in the finance. And then, does anybody have any Austin Bucks handy? Mine are full.
Yeah, I do.
Oh. So, well, I'll let you talk about Austin Bucks then, if you'd like. Yep.
We've been promoting it. There are, trying to get one out, I'm carrying it around with me. There we go. Very green, Ossining Bucks. $5 coupon. There are about 40 to 50, I didn't look today, but last time I looked it was just over 40. Could be up to 50 now participating. Local merchant. What we are encouraging people to shop local. The trustees are walking around, giving some out to folks. They're available at the public library, village hall, community center, Chamber of Commerce. This is a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. Both the website for the Chamber of Commerce and the village are listing the merchants that are accepting this. Look for this color sign also in the windows of the merchants. You come in, you do a lot of shopping, you give them the coupon, they take $5 off your bill. It is not cash, so you cannot get cash for these, but we want everybody to shop local and enjoy the holiday season throughout the village.
Anyone else with announcements? All right.
We will move on to administrative reports. And we'll begin with village manager.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to show off our winter 2018 program brochure for all of our community center events. And in partnership with the town, the Cedar Lane facility is listed in here. I want to thank Brenna, who stepped up at the community center to coordinate with all of the other program administrators to pull this together, and then thank Jamie for her work in making this look really good. And so thank you so much. It was really a team effort. Everybody pulled together. We've updated a lot of different programs, and there's new contact information. So if somebody is interested in actually participating in one of our programs, this is online. It's at the community center. It's we blasted it out on our web blast.
It'll also be at the library.
Oh, it's also, there's forms at the library, program guides at the library, so I hope that you'll take a look at it. There's a lot of really fun things that we're going to be doing this winter, and hopefully people can participate in that. So that's my news for the evening, and I'm pretty excited about this.
Move on to Corporation Counsel, Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. On tonight's agenda, we have two local laws that the board will be voting on that have gone through the public hearing process. One is with regard to our noise ordinance, and the other is with regard to our boards and commissions, putting on training requirements, term limits, and attendance requirements with regard to our various boards and commissions. We also have a resolution regarding the county's hazard mitigation plan, which we can discuss as we get to that. But it's an important resolution because once the village approves that resolution and we provide it to the state, they will provide it to FEMA, and then in the event that any monies are necessary, we are then in line to get those funds in the event that there are any disasters. And we also have a number of tax certiorari settlements that will be before the board tonight, so that those can get taken care of. Thank you, everybody.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Looking for my button to turn my microphone on. Over the past few weeks, the police department's been collecting Toys for Tots, the authorized Toys for Tots program, which is run through the Marine Corps Reserve. So tomorrow we're going to be wrapping that up. So tomorrow's your last chance during the day, probably about 3 o'clock at the end of our day tour. We'll go around and collect those. So anywhere in Austin that you find the boxes with the Toys for Tots logo on them, you can go ahead and drop off unwrapped new toys for children there. Yesterday and into today still, although this is not advice for people to go and get pulled over, we conducted a holiday traffic enforcement detail that we've entitled Operation Making Spirits Bright 2, since last year was the first year of it. We're grateful for donations from Target and from First Village Coffee that they granted us both gifts and gift certificates to hand out to motorists in lieu of tickets over the last couple of days. So yesterday that was featured on News 12, which was a nice way to promote the program and let people know what we're out there doing. Everyone that was pulled over did in fact commit a violation, as we cannot just at random stop people. But during those stops, one of the beautiful things that we have access to is discretion, that every stop does not have to end in a ticket. So we're grateful for the opportunity to hand out something nice other than a traffic ticket to people during this season to remind them that ultimately our goal is voluntary compliance and safe driving. Lastly, I just want to notify the board that we received a resignation letter today from Sergeant Paul Schemmer. He'll be retiring on Friday, December 29th. Paul's been with our department for, sorry, I got my numbers wrong now. He started as a town police officer, but as of the 29th, he'll have 20 completed years of service. During that time, he's worked as a patrol officer and a supervisor. He's been critical to maintaining our SWAT team over the years and has expanded that into what it is today, and is responsible for a good deal of the upgrades and training that we received today, and our robust firearms training, which is second to none in Westchester County. On a regular basis, our officers qualify at the highest levels in both Police Academy and on biannual qualifications, and in no small part that is thanks to Sergeant Schemmer and all the hard work that he's put in. So we will miss him, and we wish him well. Thank you.
Is anyone here for any organizational announcements? Not seeing any. Does anybody have any comments on any of the village board resolutions? Not seeing any. We'll go into the resolutions. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby approves the minutes of the December 6, 2017 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board, Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby approves the voucher detail report dated December 20th, 2017, in the amount of $859,546.89. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board?
I'd just like to, the reason for the large dollar amount for this particular disbursement has to do with about $330,000, almost $40,000 is for water work that we're doing right now for the town. So that's why the large number there, we did a disbursement.
And I would
It's a
say-
water project.
I want to say, thank you, sir. You have done an admirable job for, if not all, most of this year in doing the review of all of the voucher detail reports. I don't know if we're going to have another one before the end of the year, if that's going to force us to have a meeting, or if we can wait until January to do the last.
I think this is it, right?
Okay.
I'm happy to continue to look at the vouchers. It's a joy to do. and-
Well, when I review the liaison work for next year, we'll see if anybody else is excited to have this
Somebody raise their
opportunity and
hand
have
for that?
a deeper understanding of
Sure.
our finances on a weekly basis.
Sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's read, whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossing has been considering the adoption of proposed local law number 8, 2017, titled A Local Law Amending Chapter 178 Noise of the Village of Austin Code, and whereas in accordance with New York State law and the Village of Austin Code, and having provided all requisite notice, the Board of Trustees conducted a public hearing on December 6, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. at the Birdsall Fagan Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Austin, New York, during which time the public had an opportunity to be heard regarding the proposed local law. And was at the conclusion of the public hearing was closed, and was proposed local law has been considered by the Board of Trustees, and it has been determined that there are no impediments to proceeding with the adoption of the local law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austin hereby adopt proposed local law number 8, 2017 as local law number 8, 2017, and directs that said local law be filed and/or distributed in accordance with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
On
this
board.
is a roll call vote.
Can I-
Yes, why don't we comment before we vote?
Yeah, so Stuart, can you recap what this changes and what we did here?
Sure, happy to. What this does, it includes a section that, with regard to gas-powered leaf blowers, while we did not put in any decibel limitation, we included that as a particular type of garden tool that would be subject to the ordinance that has already existed within the village. In addition, the ordinance will now provide that with regard to the operation of permanent emergency generators, and when those generators can be operated, the decibel limits that they cannot be operated at during testing, and it also now will include an emergency provision so that the noise provisions will not be applicable in the event of certain weather emergencies, snow clearing or things like that. So those are the main changes that are in there. And back on the emergency generator, there will also be a limitation on the amount of time during any 7-day period when that testing can in fact occur.
So, I have a question. What defines an emergency? So, we had snow a few days ago, and there were people out there using blowers to clean off some of the leaves that are still on with the snow at 11:30 at night, which is not within our code, but basically told people in the neighborhood that complained about it that it is an emergency because it snowed. Do we have to declare an emergency? Is it an emergency
The way-
because it's on your driveway
No.
and
The
you
way-
can't get your car out?
The ordinance, the proposed ordinance says as follows: use of snow blowers, chainsaws, leaf blowers, including gas-powered leaf blowers, generators, including permanent emergency generators, and other domestic tools and equipment are exempted from the noise limits detailed in this chapter when the items are being used to clear driveways, streets, walkways, and the exterior of premises during and within 24 hours after snowfalls, rainstorms, ice storms, windstorms, or other emergencies as declared by the village manager.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
they're allowed to use
Because
their leaf blower to remove snow at midnight. It's just rude, but they're allowed to.
If there has been a
Within 24
declaration.
Well, there has to be a declaration. yeah,
It's within
yeah,
24,
yeah, so
there's a
Boy,
20,
that,
It has to be a declaration of an emergency.
within
by the
24
village
hours,
manager.
within 24 hours after the weather event or other emergencies as declared by the village manager.
after a weather event as declared by, I mean,
Yes.
so only during a snow emergency then?
Whatever the time, well, it says
Which is
snowfall.
not very common.
It says, I'm sorry, it says snowfalls, rainstorms, ice storms, windstorms, or other emergencies as declared by the village manager.
Okay.
Typically, we allow for snow blowers to be run at whatever hour after a snowstorm of any kind, whether it's declared a snow emergency or not. In my experience, we don't tend to run into people running them unreasonably late, and those that are running them at a later hour. Everything seems late now that the sun's down at 4:30 in the afternoon. Most neighbors are reasonable, and those that are running them late tend to either have an emergency reason or some access. We haven't had too many people that object to us asking to be good neighbors with the noise thing, but that's the way it's been handled. Leaf blowers tend to only be used during snowstorms for very, very light snow, and it tends to be very, very
Which is
Mm-hmm.
what
cool.
we had, actually.
Right.
So I guess, I know we're kind of nitpicking with the language, but I'm actually not, and I got people telling me in a really dense part of the community that between like 11:50 and 12:20 Saturday night, somebody was using their snow blower to remove snow. We obviously didn't declare a snow emergency, but it snowed. So regardless of what has been past practice, what does this say? Are they allowed to do that or not allowed to do that?
Again, I'll read it and then we can discuss.
I know you read it, but I don't understand what it says.
Well, I understand what it says. It seems very clear to me that, you know, unless there's a declared snow emergency, that, you know, you can't just do these things anytime you want. You know, that's my understanding.
That's,
of the reading of it.
that's. the-
I mean, you can't, you know, you can't at 3 in the morning decide you wanna, you know, leaf blow the half inch of snow off your driveway, because frankly, that's just rude. You know, that's just wrong. There's nothing that couldn't happen, you know, at 7 or 8 in the morning that couldn't have been done.
The
So
way-
I don't know, that's what I get.
The way it's worded here is that there's a 24-hour period that the person can use it without the noise ordinance, but again, it requires a declaration by your village manager. It's not that people can say, well, you know, snow on my driveway, I'm just gonna blow it, you know, during that 24-hour period. That's how this is
So the
here.
police could enforce, if somebody calls the police at midnight and says somebody is snow blowing,
If there's
at
no
midnight.
declaration, they could enforce.
so last weekend, there was clearly no declaration, because there wasn't that much snow.
And this
And
also
frankly,
wasn't,
nobody's gonna use a snow blower.
And this
When
also
there's no
wasn't-
declaration, there's this much snow, you know, and it's ice, you know,
It's a
it's not.
leaf blower, not a snow.
Thank you, you're right, a leaf blower, big difference.
Okay.
that's,
I mean,
So that's what I was asking.
So that's a different,
That's not
practice
what's on the
than what-
books now, though, as far as what I understand, correct?
it's not on the books now, because this would be added.
because leaf blower is not acknowledged as a garden tool, but
Well-
now it's going to.
Well, the other thing is, we don't have an emergency provision currently in our noise ordinance. So this actually puts in a provision that was otherwise not
So
there.
that you could run your generator at 3 in
Correct.
the morning because there's, you know, have no power kind of thing, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
And also just to trustee Levin, the definition of emergency is in fact broader when we're talking about the generators. So if there's a medical emergency or certain, then that's in the next paragraph. Again, notwithstanding the noise ordinance limits detailed in the chapter, a portable emergency generator or permanent emergency generator may be operated if the village manager or his or her designee determines that there is an emergency condition so that the use of the portable or permanent emergency generator is necessary to remove water from a basement, operate medical equipment for the health and welfare of an occupant in the event of a power blackout. So there's, with regard to generators, there's more of a discretion in terms of the ability to use
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Codman?
Yes.
I don't even know why is this a roll call? I'm
This is
just-
the law.
This is the law.
I just,
Trustee Bazemore?
Aye.
Trustee Levin? Trustee
Yes.
Cazada?
Aye.
And Mayor Garrity?
Aye.
Thank you.
Ayes have it. No abstentions this time.
Okay, we're adopting local law number 9. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law number 9, 2017, titled Local Law adding Chapter 6, Boards and Commissions, to the Village of Ossining Code and amending Chapter 8, Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, Chapter 17, Code of Ethics, Chapter 119, Environmental Advisory Council, Chapter 162, Housing, Property Maintenance and Building Code Administration, and Chapter 270, Zoning of the Village of Ossining Code. And whereas in accordance with New York State law and the Village of Ossining Code, and having provided all requisite notice, the Board of Trustees conducted a public hearing on December 6, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. at the Birdsall Fagan Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Ossining, New York, during which time the public had an opportunity to be heard regarding the proposed local law. And was at the conclusion of the public hearing was closed, and was the proposed local law has been considered by the Board of Trustees, and it has been determined that there are no impediments to proceeding with the adoption of local law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby adopts proposed local law number 9 as local law number 9, 2017, and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accordance with applicable law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board, would anybody like to comment on this? Well, I'll just say thank you very much to Stuart and Debbie for coming to us with some recommendations on how we can support our boards and commissions, as well as really have the boards and committees be able to serve the village in the best way possible, particularly with the formal inclusion of training for more of them, as well as ensuring that folks are attending regularly so that we can make sure that we have the voices present that are really able to influence it. And we're already seeing that we have a lot of people that are applying for positions on many of these boards and commissions. I know we still are looking for some people on some boards and commissions because we have some expired terms on particularly Historic Preservation Commission. So if folks have an interest in Historic Preservation Commission, that's one of them. And then besides that, we just spend most of our evenings interviewing candidates these days, and we hope to make a lot of appointments in early January.
May I say
Please.
something? You know what, it was interesting. Last night I actually went to another municipality not too far from here. I had to do on a zoning board, which lucky enough I was able to get the variance for the person that I was represented. But anyway, there was 5 members, and only it's a 5-board member, I should say, but there were only 3 members because other 2 people have resigned. And one of the conversations that they were having is like they don't have enough people to do the voluntary work that they need, you know. So it was interesting to see that they could not pass their minutes from 2 months ago because there wasn't a quorum for those. So literally it's going to happen sometime next year if they get at least 4 people. So after we finished our meeting, you know, I said, we used to have that problem. We don't have that problem anymore. He said, well, send some of them over here if you have some overflow. So it was just interesting to see that it's not, that we did have that problem 3 years ago, you know, but that things have changed, and there's a lot of more people in our community that is interested to be part of our committee, so,
Yes.
which is a good.
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Levin? Trustee Kazada?
Aye.
Yes, sorry. Shaking my head, yes.
Trustee Codman?
Aye.
Trustee Bazemore?
Aye.
And Mayor Garrett?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolved that the village manager of the Village of Ossining is hereby authorized to execute the necessary documents to enter into a contract with QBE North America, 55 Water Street, New York, New York, for stop-loss insurance coverage for the village's self-funded health plan for the term effective January 1, 2018 through December 31st, 2018, at a monthly rate per enrollee of $8.34 per aggregate premium and $149.79 per specific premium, such documents being subject to review and approval by the Corporation and Council, and be it further resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to pay required premium to effect coverage. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I don't think we discussed this, usually we do before things come on. I'm sure this is one of those perfunctory things that we do every year, but could Debbie, or actually Tom's referenced in here as authorizing payment, which is a little unusual, but could you give us just a quick idea of what this is? Debbie, you can, I didn't mean that Tom had to speak, I just, you usually.
Tom is the one.
Well, it's up to you.
Standing up.
I'm
Tom
happy
can
to let
explain
him,
it.
I'm happy to let him explain.
Okay.
I think Debbie might still be in a learning phase, since this has to do with our self-insured health insurance.
Right.
And we have this stop-loss insurance, which is for catastrophic losses. And we pay premiums, and we asked our TPA POMCO, which is now going under a new name. They were acquired by, I think, RME or RMA, I'm not sure. But they had solicited proposals, and we considered the different proposals, and we actually increased the I guess the exposure that we're willing to accept on per individual losses from $130,000 to $135,000. But at the same time, we're actually saving money in the overall premiums, and so that's reflected here. We've used QBE previously. We had a different company, I think RDA, the past year, and QBE was actually a better deal for the village and offered more coverage and exposure. And the reason for the provision that I pay any required premium was because we were changing companies. We think that POMCO will be able to cover the premium for us just to get the insurance in effect, but if they're not, then we have a fallback for the village to pay the immediate premium to get the coverage going. So I hope I was able to explain that adequately.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas all jurisdictions within Westchester County have exposure to natural hazards that increase the risk of life, property, environment, and the county and local economy, and whereas proactive mitigation of known hazards before a disaster event can reduce or eliminate long-term risk to life and property, and whereas the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, Local Law 106-390, established new requirements for pre- and post-disaster hazard mitigation programs, and whereas a coalition of Westchester County municipalities with like planning objectives has been formed to pool resources and create consistent mitigation strategies within Westchester County. And whereas the coalition has completed a planning process that engages the public, assesses the risk and vulnerability to the impacts of natural hazards, develops a mitigation strategy consistent with a set of uniform goals and objectives, and creates a plan for implementing, evaluating, and revising this strategy. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining, 1, adopts in its entirety the 2015 Westchester County Hazard Mitigation Plan as the jurisdiction's natural hazard mitigation plan, and resolves to execute the actions identified in the plan that pertain to the Village of Ossining. 2, will use the adopted and approved portions of the plan to guide pre- and post-disaster mitigation of hazards identified. 3, will coordinate the strategies identified in the plan with other planning programs and mechanisms under its jurisdictional authority. 4, will continue its support of the Mitigation Planning Committee as described within the plan. 5, will help to promote and support the mitigation successes of all participants in this plan. 6, will incorporate mitigation planning as an integral component of government and partner operations. And 7, will provide an update of the plan in conjunction with the county no less than every 5 years. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
This is another one that was a late addition, and we hadn't discussed before. Now, we certainly have gotten FEMA funds in the past. I don't remember if it was Sandy or Floyd before that. we were in need of updating this, and you became aware of that. Do you wanna tell us just briefly?
So
what this is?
as part of the emergency management team for the county, I went to my first meeting, and it had been brought to our attention that the plan had been developed, but we had not adopted our part of that yet. In order for the plan to be totally complete and for us to access funding, we needed to do this adoption. So they were asking us to do it as quickly as we could so that we could be complete in what we do. The benefit here is that through the emergency management team, we look at all the different hazards that are potential for our area, and then we come up with a plan for how we're going to support each jurisdiction and support each other. What are the resources that are out there, and how can we be ready when there's an imminent threat of a disaster of some kind. So it really gives us an opportunity to pre-think anything and everything that could possibly happen and have a plan for how we're going to act should that incident come up. So this is a good plan. I didn't read the whole county plan, but I read our part. And it also gives us some pre-thinking, so when we're designing roads and we're designing different development projects, we can be looking at our plan and reference those plans to make sure that we're not negatively impacting anything that we perceive as a hazard that could happen in the future. So it's a great planning document for us to use. Thank you.
Is that available online?
It is available online on the Westchester County Emergency Management website.
Can we maybe put a link on our website that refers to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure, we haven't, that's a great idea.
It should be through the planning department, I assume. You guys do the
Yeah,
stormwater
it's a great
Sure.
idea. As we do the new website, we can consider putting that on there now that we've adopted it.
Put a note on my.
Yeah, to look for it.
I have an idea where.
Okay,
Great.
Jamie's writing it down because she's gonna be putting it on, so.
All those in
It's on
favor?
there.
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas certain tax certiorari proceedings were instituted against the town of Austin by Clinton Terrace LP to review the assessment against petitioner's property situated at 70 Croton Avenue in the village of Austin, and designated as section 89.19, block 2, lot 18, for the assessment years 2014, 2015, and 2016 taxes, which proceedings were commenced in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Westchester County, under index numbers 66962, 2014, 67421, 2015, and 64443, 2016. And it was the Village of Austin ceased being a tax assessing unit in 1989, and now adopts the Town of Austin's assessment roll for the Village of Austin as prepared by the assessor of the Town of Austin for all subsequent years. And whereas on September 12, 2017, a consent judgment was entered in favor of the petitioner Clinton Terrace LP against the Town of Austin, correcting, fixing, and reducing the assessed valuation of the aforesaid real property and the improvements situate thereon, as set forth in Schedule A, annexed hereto. Whereas the aforementioned current judgment, among other things, directs the Village of Austin to audit and pay to the petitioner the amount of all village taxes paid by the petitioner as taxes against the said erroneous assessments in excess of what the taxes would have been if the assessment made it in the aforesaid years had been determined by this order. And we move on to resolve that the village treasurer is authorized to make the aforesaid payment to avoid payment of any penalties, and it is further resolved that the village treasurer shall make a notation in the margin of the assessment rolls of the Village of Austin that said assessments were reduced and payment of a refund of the overpayment of real property taxes was made pursuant to said judgment. And that is a total of $47,471.86. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board, Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas a certain tax certiorari proceedings was instituted against the Town of Austin by MDY Realty Corp. To review the assessment against petitioner's property situated at 2325 Spring Street and 2729 Spring Street in the Village of Austin, and designated as section 89.19, block 4, lot 88, and section 89.19, block 4, lot 87, for the 2016 assessment year, which proceeding was commenced in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Westchester County, under index number 64744, 2016, and whereas the Village of Ossing ceased being a tax assessing unit in 1989, and now adopts the Town of Ossing assessment roll for the Village of Ossing as prepared by the assessor of the Town of Ossing for all subsequent years. And whereas on September 12, 2017, a consent judgment was entered in favor of petitioner MDY Realty Corp. against the Town of Ossing, correcting, fixing, and reducing the assessed valuations of the aforesaid real property and the improvements situate thereon as set forth in Schedule A, annexed hereto. And whereas the aforesaid consent judgment, among other things, directs the Village of Ossing to audit and pay to the petitioner the amount of all village taxes paid by the petitioner as taxes against the said erroneous assessment in excess of what the taxes would have been if the assessment made in the aforesaid years had been determined by this order. And you're looking at Schedule A, MDY Realty for 2325 Spring Street of $1,431.44, and MDY Realty 2729 Spring Street for the total of $1,737.61. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas a certain tax certiorari proceeding was instituted against the Town of Ossing by Louis Bataille to review the assessment against petitioner's property situated at 30 North Malcolm Street in the Village of Ossing and designated as Section 89.19, Block 1, Lot 29.2, excuse me, for the 2016 assessment year, which proceedings was commenced in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Westchester County, under index number 53861, 2017, and whereas the Village of Ossing ceased being a tax assessing unit in 1989, and now adopts the Town of Ossing assessment roll for the Village of Ossing as presented by the assessor of the Town of Ossing for all subsequent years. And whereas on September 12, 2017, a consent judgment was entered in favor of the petitioner, Louis Bataille, against the Town of Ossing, correcting, fixing, and reducing the assessed valuation of the aforesaid real property and the improvements situate thereon, as set forth in Schedule A, annexed hereto. And whereas the aforesaid consent judgment, among other things, directs the Village of Ossing to audit and pay to the petitioner the amount of all village taxes paid by the petitioner as taxes against the said erroneous assessment in excess of what the taxes would have been if the assessment made in the aforesaid year had been determined by this order. And you're looking at a total of $1,148.93. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That completes your resolutions. Do you have any continuing business of the board?
We do not.
Do you have any new business of the board?
We do not. I mean, because we're going to work session to do the other fun thing, right?
Right. That brings us to visitor recognition. Is there anyone who wants to be addressed? Yes, no?
No, I don't know if everybody heard. It's time for visitor recognition. Did anybody want to comment on something of general interest to the community? Okay.
Okay. May we then have an adjournment to a work session?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, jumped ahead there, Mary.
That's okay.
It wasn't a controversial. Okay, so, Debbie, you had suggested that we may want to review not just this building, but all of our village-owned properties, and what's their status, and what can we, and I think you had two helpers who are not
I
here,
know.
so they'll have to come back.
Oh, where'd they go?
Tom's gonna retrieve them.
They sat here for
They
the whole
can't
time.
run now. That's not how this works.
It's Christmas. Strange things happen at Christmas.
Oh, we have the water, but no cups.
He only gave me one cup, there's a picture there.
Oh, I thought he gave her sleep.
No, he gave me the one cup of water from the,
Thank you.
All right.
Are they
Well, we're not live, so we can cut this out when we,
We're getting there. We're getting that part.
minor editing.
Right.
As long as we don't cover anything.
That was a long evening of legislation.
Discussing honorary stuff
On
now.
the 17th, you
I
mean?
wasn't going to,
Okay.
because I was gonna collate all of that and then send it out to the
I
board.
just thought you were doing it tonight.
No, all I was gonna do was the buildings.
Okay.
So I'll just sort of introduce that while we're waiting for the other two gentlemen. So what you have before you is a list of the different buildings. And Paul and Andy and John went through the buildings. I put it on your desk. It should be,
Thank you.
there you go. And I asked them to really pull out an idea of the different capital items that we were gonna need. And remember, we talked about what would we have to bond for, what are bigger things, what do we think that we could do in-house with the budget. And there they are, and you need to come closer.
Gentlemen, would you join us in the,
Come be a
the
part
horseshoe?
of the discussion.
We need to
Well, they can,
There's a chair right here.
or they can, you can pull one up in the,
There we go. And so, thank you for coming. So this is a list of the different buildings and what we're anticipating, so that you can have a, great, thank you. Have an idea of exactly what we're looking at in the future. Some of these items are in the capital plan. But I think what we'll do is, after we have this discussion with you, we can actually go back to our capital plan and start to amend it based on what you're thinking. But the community center, I think I brought up to you at a past meeting and said, you know, we really need to start thinking about an upgrade to the community center. And what is that really gonna mean? And so when I walked around with these guys and they were saying, well, we need to do this and this and this, and I said, okay, let's put it down on paper. And the fire alarm panel was like stuck out as something that we were going to have to upgrade. Our alarm system there is in two different alarms for two different sections of the building, and they're in locked rooms, and it's kind of a strange setup. And if we're gonna do upgrades to the building, then we need to think about that. The main boiler replacement, so what it says here is replaced within 5 years. So whenever you see something that has a number of years, 4 to 6 or 10, that tells you about how far out we're thinking. So it's not like an immediate, need to do it today type of thing, but something to consider. The sliding roof panels that are over the pool don't work anymore, so we need to get those operational again.
Do they, actually, are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah,
Or you
sure.
wanna-
Yeah.
So, when did they ever work? Like, did they work, and how well was that? It's just a lot of places that had installed them, it was very in for a while, have shut it down because it continuously breaks. It's not just a function of where you buy it. You know, I think even Fit has been like a beautiful system. They never open it anymore. They can, they just won't. They just break all the time, so
Well, they did work.
do we need it? I mean, I'm just saying, like, I
think-
mean, something exists, do you need to fix it to do that? Or do you need a roof in there that's a window so that it brings light in? You know, I'm trying to understand whether there was thought that went into, this is broken, I wanna fix it, or this is broken, it's not really necessary, I wanna put glass in here, or something. Or I think the library installed solar windows in their building when they did that whole construction.
I don't know if it's broken versus inoperable. I know that it wasn't being utilized, so we put it on the list for something to make operable again.
Okay.
Personally, I think it's a nice feature, particularly in the summer if you're swimming in the pool, but that's just a preference thing. If, like you said, if you wanna just say, you know what, you're indoors, and you don't wanna have that outdoor type environment, then you don't have to fix it. You could just make it a sealed system.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing more about what that means practically and the feasibility of it and the cost, but I will say, it's a wonderful, wonderful facility that we have, and it's extremely well utilized by our community. But in July and August, I don't wanna be there. If it could be appealing, it would be a lot if it could be, if you could feel like you were outdoors and connected to the outdoors, it would be a significant improvement in the enjoyment of it. But I don't know what the cost is, and I don't know if we're gonna, you know, put a bunch of money into it, and if it's just gonna chronically not gonna function, so.
I'm gonna
maybe
say
we'll
this
learn more about it.
differently. There is like, a door is broken, we need to fix it. There is, a door is broken, do we need a door here? So laundry lists are great, but I'm really
Mhm.
interested in use. More and more places are not doing this open system,
Mhm.
because in fact, people don't want their kids in the sun. It's not healthy. So, you know, what we think is like a feeling of outdoors, for others is not a good use. So again, I'd like to, like we did with this building,
Yeah.
replace, great, it's broken, I need the door, and then the question is, do you need a door there? So that's all I'm asking for, is like,
Mhm.
do you need it? And it might be more expensive to actually seal it up, frankly, so it's not just the cost, it's what are you gonna do with it, and if it's something that always breaks, don't replace it.
Right, and I
So,
think you
I mean,
make
I'm
a.
not making any judgment here, I'm just asking
Sure.
a question.
I think that's a good point for all of these things,
Right.
really. And that the purpose is just to bring to light sort of everything that's sort of a bigger scope,
Yeah.
so that we know where we wanna go.
Great.
So
But, yeah.
can I ask something in regards to this? So pretty much, part of the title, it says community center, $1 million. That's pretty much put a, sort of like an estimate
Right.
to the different sections of either repairs, maintenance, of exterior work.
Mhm.
So, like you mentioned before, some of the items, they don't need to be replaced within a range of 4 to 6 years.
Right,
Some of the stuff are very simple that I'm sure our staff can do, but I think if the board's gonna have a capital project for about $1 million, more or less, I think, you know, on something that we had previous conversations when Rika brought up, you know, to me, it's not just painting the walls, not just, you know, changing the lights to LEDs. I think the functioning, how the circulation within the community center works, you know, to me is more than just this laundry list. We need to have like a floor plan. You know, if we're gonna invest in something, we need to hire a professional to actually tell us, this is how this is gonna work the best, function, and this is what we are proposing to change. Because some of that stuff in here is the restrooms, and how does that work, the locker rooms area. So it's not, that's something that, you know, we still have to comply with New York State laws in some of these areas. So my suggestion would be for the board moving forward is to, yes, look at this, but look at spending some soft costs on this. That will do, someone here can come in and be like, look, this is what we are proposing, what do you guys think? You know, so a professional,
Mhm.
I think it should be involved in this process. at some
right.
point.
And I think that's
I think she is.
again, the purpose of this is, if we're gonna spend $1 million to do
Correct.
these things, would you want this to be where we spend a little bit of money to really get that design and say, this is how it can be more functional, or it can be improved, and do you wanna do the bigger project, and then you can decide. But that's, you know, I don't know what your threshold is for, and this is, it says $1 million overall, but again, the repairs and maintenance budget, you know, we're gonna have to buy the materials, but, the staff can do it but how many years will it take them to get it done? Because they have other work to do as well. And when the facility is being used, you can't really get in there and do it, so when do we close it down and when do we do it? So there's some operational issues with that. So you really look at the length of time versus what you wanna get out of it, and how much you're gonna be spending just for little nitpicky things. So I think that's a great point.
This is a beginning of a laundry list.
Very
You're
much
just
so.
trying to get a barometer.
Absolutely.
So if there's something that we're looking for, you're taking some notes, this is not a plan, this is
Nope.
like a needs list, and we can, right? I mean,
Right.
first step, first blush.
But I think it's, if you look at all of the buildings all together, again, you
Yeah.
know.
A relative stance of, you
Right,
know,
so we have, for police, we have 500,000, these are all the things that need to be done. The roof doesn't need to be done for 15 years, but we really need to do these other improvements. And, you know, would you wanna package some things together and do multiple things as well? So, it's just sort of the beginning of that discussion.
So I had a question, I passed by related to this.
Okay.
I passed by the county center this morning, I never noticed this before. So they have their parking lot, this actually has a corporation on their sign, like IKEA of White Plains. It's the IKEA of White Plains, I mean, I'm sure they're paying for that. So are there laws about I mean, it's a part of the county, so I
Well,
was
that's
surprised.
the company that runs the lot.
No, it's
I
not.
don't, I don't think that they have, I don't think that they've named the parking lot after the IKEA. I think it's,
Okay.
I think the vendor
No,
for the,
it's a sponsorship for the Kia White Plains with their address in York.
oh, you said Kia, I'm sorry. I thought you
IKEA,
said-
yeah, it's the Kia, K-I-A, I'm sorry, I'm
Right.
saying IKEA. I
But
meant to say
the
Kia.
county has there are circumstances and there are opinions as to when municipalities can
Okay,
use naming rights.
right, well, because high schools have Nike sponsoring
Right.
their uniform. It's just when we talk about taxpayer dollars being used.
Right.
It would be really cool if we were allowed to at least have that option available to us. I just don't know if we're allowed to legally or not, so I'd be interested as you research some of this, whether
Okay.
that would be a possibility.
Mhm. You know, you can just sort of see the bathrooms, some of the bathrooms there need to be upgraded, but again, are they the best flow? Could they be expanded, improved, combined? I mean, I don't know
Right.
the answer to that. The repairs and maintenance, the LED lighting would save us a lot of money if we can upgrade that, but when you do that, you're gonna wanna do the panels. If we're gonna replace the flooring, is it asbestos in that building?
No.
They're not, okay.
Really? Wow.
So, you know, but again, how much cleaning of the floors can you do? And I just think it's really important, since it is sort of the center of our community, that it look really sharp and be, you know, top-notch for our residents and the people that use it. So that's looking at the carpeting. So the museum space, I'm not sure how that's going to play out. If the Sing Sing Museum gets up and running, I'm not sure they'll wanna have two. I don't know.
They won't, but it'll be a little while.
Okay, all right. But then the community room, where we have our seniors and we have bingo and, you know, that needs a major overhaul. The music room definitely needs an
Yeah.
overhaul, some carpeting. Again, they're minor things, but we're gonna need to be budgeting in future years for the materials. Staff can do it and we can plan those type of renovations in the winter or on Sundays or some other time.
I just want to clarify, I probably spoke too soon. They wouldn't still use it in the same way as a museum space, but we have spoken about the potential for the community center to be a sort of a tourism hub to direct people. So there,
Okay.
it would be nice if that space could be converted and a portion of it could be used tying into the prison museum as well as some of the other Hudson Valley tourism, because
Okay.
we want to work really hard at connecting the museum to the downtown, so
Right.
we might want to, but it wouldn't be the same.
Okay.
John, you seem to have your hand up.
Well, I guess, you know, I mean, obviously, we're kind of going building by building here. I think for me, the most important things we need to take care of have to do with energy, and that has to do with, you know, a sunsetting of funding that's available to us for solar and other alternative energy opportunities that we would have within the municipality. I think that, I think solar is a great option for us. You know, we recently got news from NIPA that they're gonna be raising our rates over 6% next year. And this won't be the first time I've said this, but, you know, we've been kind of living in, you know, through rose-colored glasses on energy costs. And anytime there's an opportunity for us to create energy efficiency or create cost savings, you know, I would consider those to be priorities. Obviously, there's other things that are around those activities that would also need to be taking place. But at the end of the day, you know, LED lighting, you know, roof improvement that could allow us to put in solar panels that would allow us to go back into the grid. We could literally pay for a lot of this, or even pay for the borrowing to do all these projects. So I think it's very important that we look through the lens of energy and energy savings, and the opportunity to use whatever savings we have to drive towards, you know, debt relief, because we will have to borrow to do a lot of these types of projects. I just think that's, and mostly I say that just because at the end of 2019, a lot of subsidies are going to be vanishing for us. So I really feel as though the window is closing, as it were, and the time is ticking. So from my perspective, regardless of whether it's the community center or the police station or one of the firehouses or the highway garage or whatever, I think we need to go to the places where we can get that roof work done and we can begin to start taking control of our energy future. So.
Have we done an energy audit?
Well, there was an audit that was done by a group of folks, and I think Paul and Andy have it. They did a pretty detailed, I mean, it wasn't like super detailed, but they did go through a bunch of the buildings to look at where there were opportunities.
Okay.
I would share that with Debbie. That was a couple of years ago.
NYSERDA did the first.
Well, yeah, but that was a long time ago. I'm talking about there were some folks that came in and did some work for us initially, and I don't know, I can find a copy of it, but that was something that was done as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, and that had some very interesting observations to make around energy. And they actually went to all the firehouses, they looked at them, and I know they looked at a couple of other buildings. So that could be beneficial to an analysis.
So, for me, this is helpful because roofs seem to be in a lot of the buildings, right? So that's like a common denominator, windows, I guess, in some of the firehouses. So it's really helpful that you guys did this, is that you could look at it and say, okay, we have 12 roof, and you're not looking building by building, you may actually prioritize, not based on how one uses a building, but actually say, because in the firehouses that aren't done correct, not everything can have solar. You could change windows to solar windows, you could also do green roofs in some of them, which also lower, it's an energy efficient methodology, because you would have a vendor come in and actually say, here are the roofs, right? Universities have done this. They don't do a building, they look at their campus and say, what do I do?
Right.
So I think this is great, because you could do sort of a horizontal versus building by building, but doing an inventory. I mean, there are things like, I don't know if we have to go building, did you want to do building by building as we have this conversation?
Just the rest
To
of
sort
them are
of point things
pretty
out?
minor. I think the large one is Village Hall.
Yeah, really surprising, by the way, that's as large as it is. But,
Do you know how old the community center is?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How old the building is?
The community
Which
center?
one?
Well, the natatorium edition was done about, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And the Caputo Center original building, I couldn't tell you, I'm gonna
Like
guess
30?
in the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay. So I'll just say for me, when we start thinking about the community center, and it's important that we keep the building in shape, but long term, which some may say was missing when we did the swimming pool, is really looking at the use of our building. It is a building that's utilized by a lot of members of the community, but I think, thinking about space and the future use of the building, that eventually we have to start looking at the, expanding, because we are a growing community. And it may be time to just understand how the building is being used and what the future use could be. So that's
Is it
always-
overcrowded at all times, or is it peaks and
I mean,
valleys?
it's
Mostly peaks.
It's peaks and valleys.
No, mostly peaks.
mostly peaks,
So it's busy all the time.
pretty much.
Largely, yes. During the day, it's used more by seniors until after school program. And in the evenings, it's packed. Weekends, it's packed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was saying last night, I was kind of surprised by the amount of people that were there. So that means someone else is not there, right? That might want to utilize it.
It also means that there are more and more places charging, and we don't. There's a lot of issues about why it's supposed to be used, but definitely the use of space, of whether it needs one more floor, or, that kind of thing. I guess the school uses the pool a lot, so that takes up the pool, so people who want to swim have to go at different times. I mean, there's a whole thing, but usually these centers are, and what time does it open in the morning?
7:30? 7:30? I think.
Because
That's on this.
because the other way,
7:30 till 10.
because the other way to do things like that is also the time management.
What's in the book? Oh,
Right. The book that we,
Which Jane probably remembers.
the brochure that just came out.
So I think you're saying, don't start doing a roof if you're planning to expand the building. For
Yeah, I'm just
example,
saying, like,
you
we
gotta
kind
think
of,
about the
we
whole
keep the
building.
whole building, like, where are we going with this?
Right.
Yeah, that's
So,
what I thought.
Stuart,
Okay.
I don't know if this is a legal thing that you have looked into or you could look into, but what trustee Codman was referencing with the rebates that make solar affordable. The reason why any of us can afford to do it in our homes, why any business, why any municipality can afford to do it is because there's been federal incentives to do so. And the federal incentive programs are going to expire in 2019.
Right.
That is our understanding. So when they expire, it will no longer be a financial option for us. So that's why I would be particularly interested as we look at our buildings on which of these can we in the next year and a half, 2 years, install solar. And if there's a roof that would be a good candidate for solar, and it needs to be shored up, then can we do that in the next year and a half so that we can take advantage of some of these? Otherwise, it's not gonna be financially an option for us, because yes, it does make it more energy efficient, we will eventually save money, but no one can afford to lay out the money initially without getting the rebates, and those are going to drive, and there's no indication that the current federal administration is likely to renew those.
Right, so I think
Yes.
the decision for the board is that a lot of these roofs are gonna last us another 6 or 8 years. So in order for solar to go on them, they have to be brand new and they have to be built to hold the solar. So you're going to be cutting that life short to invest more money to put solar on it. And it could be a cost benefit that you wanna do, but that would be the financial.
In some cases, it may make sense, but not others. What were you ready for?
Trustee Codman's correct, as the rates go up, it becomes more appealing than it does presently, because right now it's really not cost effective based on the rate that we're paying. But we did have come in, and the solar that we were considering here was a lease option that we had discussed with that one contractor, because when we visited with a couple of potential lease contractors, they all assessed our roof shed that we had available to them, and this was the only building that provided the return on investment for the point source, right, of capacity of panels. So that's why we thought that between the fact that this roof needs to be redone, and it also provides the most cost-effective roof shed for a potential outside entity to come in and lease the space and create their own customers within the district. That's why we're talking about this one as a solar candidate. And you're also correct in that next year, because they change every year, their lease agreement might not be as presented 6 months ago, because the vendor said we have to wait to see what happens, and then we'll see what happens politically versus where you are with the construction of the project. So that's why the way it's written in the proposal right now is assess the roof and coordinate with outside entity. This architect does not have a solar design in their contract. Their design is to rehabilitate the roof and make it able to accommodate solar panels for an outside vendor.
I mean, my question though is that does NYPA provide us the option? I mean, we buy power from the New York Power Authority for this building, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there an option to hook our panels up to their grid so that whatever we produce would push back against our meter, or is the leaser is leasing the space to some third-party solar firm that wants to use it to build their own, basically what they're doing, they're creating a solar farm. They're creating an opportunity for us to leverage this space, and they're leasing that space to us because that has value to them, because they can produce power and then resell that power.
It's tough for me to get an answer from Con Ed or NYPA on net metering and the ability to sell power to the grid, because I don't know if they really have full-blown programs for larger systems versus what they're doing residentially, which is a contained system where it goes right back into your house, so to speak. I think those are programs that are being developed as systems are developed. But when we designed this, again, it was a lease of the roof shed for a cost certain. Guaranteed money. You're leasing this space, you pay us every month. How you sell it to the residents is you have to negotiate that. It's like anything else. If they're giving you a lease, is it sliding scale where we know they're gonna start charging the residents more, are we allowed to increase the lease accordingly? We went into all that, but we weren't willing to commit.
So were you gonna produce power that we would sell back to the residents?
Yes, but they would sell it. They would take the power, and then they would put it on the grid.
So, but that's just, whatever the financial structure is that makes sense, we do need to know how financially beneficial it is, so that we know what the cost benefit is. But right now, we're just talking about where can it be accommodated? Have we done a basic analysis of what roofs are good candidates? It sounds like we've done at least some of that, and then what, just further sunlight capacity, and then what roofs are able to accommodate it in the near future, or could be, what would be worth the investment. So you have a couple more pages of information here, do you wanna go through that or
just keep
highlight
going.
some for us?
So I will say that we'll look into the incentives and find out what the program details are, and then as we do some more exploration on the solar and our ability to do it, we'll give you more information, so. The Village Hall,
So just the police station that you?
oh, sorry,
That's okay.
yeah,
I
the
just-
police
It's a
station,
real like loggerous, but I keep seeing some of the, it just sounds the same, I think, but carpeting and all that, I'm just,
right, so
I
the
feel like we voted
HVAC,
on.
we did,
Yeah,
but they're still on here until we actually do them.
okay.
What is new here is the new counter for parking administration. Kevin had talked about, putting a hole in one of the walls so that he has a service area for people that wanna come in and get their parking tickets or parking, permits, not tickets, but permits. things like that.
Waiver.
And their overnight waivers, things like that, right.
Okay.
The Village Hall, you'll see emergency generator on this building and some of the firehouses as a common theme. Electrical upgrades, roof still has 8 to 10 years on it, new fire panel. And do you want to explain the HVAC? Because it's in two parts.
Yeah, there's the finance office had an HVAC system and the manager's office installed over 20 years ago. It's a split system. Last year, we had to do an emergency purchase of a new condenser and a new evaporator for finance. I know it's the same useful life, probably 1 or 2 years left on it, so I just wanted to put it on there. That, we can expect to change it out in the next 2 years.
2 years.
And almost all of these have installed new fire alarm panel, like every single, were they all put in at the same time and now they all need to be replaced? It's like almost every building.
The one that's at 16 Croton is over 30 years old. That's an issue with heat, and it's building up heat, and it's not working properly. At the community center, that's over 30 years old.
So the answer would be yes, they're all.
Yeah, they're all old, and they're all they're non-open architecture, they're proprietary equipment, so you have to call that company in to specifically fix it.
But basically 30 years ago,
Yeah.
the village put in a whole bunch of them, 25 to 30, and now they basically all have to be replaced.
Yes.
Because every building has a listing of that. Is that an accurate statement
accurate.
about?
That's accurate.
Okay. So there's another one. There's some things that you just need to do across the board.
The exterior upgrades I thought were very interesting and that we should talk about, because there's the stone wall that's in the back that holds up the parking area in the back, and there's water that's coming down and infiltrating that needs to be deflected, and so you'll see a number of things here that all kind of work together. But that's a pretty big project. These guys have said they could do it in-house, but again, it's gonna take some design and approval, and maybe we can make some more parking back there. Parking is a premium at the building, as you know, and there is discussion about the old Section 8 building, which is now used for storage, that little building.
Bungalow.
We could take that down because we don't really need it and make more parking.
No, what is it called, Shack? I don't know
That's
what
a
it's called.
kind word.
Oh, well, but it's that little building.
It's a little building.
Yeah.
Right now,
Amy
there's some
allowed me.
records in it, so if we talk about making the records facility here and putting all the records down there, there's how many pounds of records?
80,000 pounds.
80,000
In the
pounds
building.
of records in the attic. Probably not good for an old building. So
Fire hazard.
and a fire hazard. So we can move, we can do what we talked about, which is going through the records, disposing of the records properly that don't need to be retained, and then finding a place down in the basement of this building where they're secure, and then taking the few records that are used by the Section 8 office and putting them up there, because they do use those records every day, on a very regular basis. So that would be a minor move to that area, but that way it would free up that building and we could take that out and create some additional parking. Okay. The highway garage just needs a few things, and we actually talked today, since we don't think it has a large ticket item, we might be able to roll it into the operations center budget and get it all done at the same time. The last page is a list that I got from the fire department, from Chief DeCruz, and some of those things are things that we would be responsible for because they're building, and some of them are interiors, which is things that they would like to do in the building, but it would be at their cost. So I've separated those out. We really haven't had a chance as a staff here to assess the actual need or how much it would cost, or look into any of the details like the new roofs and things like that. So it's just a starting point for the firehouses.
When they say fire department, that's what they're saying, pay for that out of their operating budget.
Right, they would pay for
Still,
that.
it's still a general fund expense though.
No, they would pay for that out of the money that they receive from the village for the contracts.
Of their IMA money.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the other monies that they receive. Their
Fundraising.
and their percentage of state funds. So the way they explained it when I went on the tour was anything inside, they fix with their money, and anything that's building related, we fix.
It's like a co-op of buildings.
Right.
Wall.
So it's just an idea
Interact.
of what they're looking at. Any questions?
I think the only thing I would say is that you know, many of the firehouses are you know, their energy sources are come from Con Ed. And, you know, Con Ed has a net metering program, and I would like to find out if any of the firehouses that we own would be candidates for solar.
Okay.
You know, I think,
Why are they Con Ed customers?
you know, I don't know how that happened, but that's the way, Tom, is there any reason for that?
No, they have Power Authority electricity, but the natural gas is through Con Ed.
Okay. Oh, so it's NIPA electricity, but it's Con Ed gas?
Yes.
Right, so we're making.
All right, so it's the same, we're in the
It's the
same
same thing.
situation.
That's the same for all
I mean,
buildings.
I guess I would want to, you know, I think we need to find out from NIPA what their deal is with net metering. And I would want to, get an answer. I mean, I really want to find, and if we have to go through our senator or whatever to find out what's going on, this is a quasi-public authority. They should be thinking about how they can help us out, and other municipalities. I mean, I can't imagine we're the only people that are thinking about this. So, and I'm prepared to push political pressure to make this happen. I think this is really important to us. Like I said, you know, we only got till the end of 19 for these subsidies to be around for us, and I think this is something that's, as you can tell, I'm pretty hot about and excited about, and I think we ought to do something about it. So, Tom?
I just wanted to add, I think NYSERDA has access to a lot of assistance, but we apparently can't access NYSERDA since we're with the Power Authority. So that's
Yeah, I
something that
mean,
needs
to
to be
me,
worked
that, just
on.
that.
So there was, okay, so wait, we do not pay a systems benefits charge because we're a NIPA customer, which means we don't get access to NYSERDA kickbacks or rebates the same way a private entity would. But there is a program that exists for municipalities to be able to access solar funding, and it was something that Sustainable Westchester fought for years, and it's a workaround so that for the last couple of years we have been able to access the rebates for solar. So we could do it. It's just that all that money disappears in 2 years.
So, the reason why we you started working on this sort of breakdown in different buildings is because of a capital project that we had passed in our budget, which is the operations center. There hasn't been a proposal signed yet with the architectural firm that came in a couple of weeks back in regards to this presentation. So my question is to the rest of the board members is where we go from here, or where you guys see go from here?
Well, I think we approved that they can go and give us, right, the next step. Isn't that what we approved?
You approved signing the authorization to prepare the construction drawings
Right.
and do the evaluation. I have not signed that contract because of the conversation about, are we sure we want to spend that money here, right now? Which is, you're right. And I said, let's look at the full picture, and then you can decide. I think that after you've walked through the building, you can see why it's important that we do those upgrades, but I don't know how you feel about all of them.
Again, part of that, and then, you know, we saw what we have. It's a conversation that you may need to have with them, and be like, this is the budget that you presented, sure. This is probably like the needs, and I'm not sure if we all disagree with what we don't need. I mean, some of the stuff we talked about, solar panels, we talked about, you know, how the structural and how stuff that is gonna be happening here. So, and that's a conversation that they will have to have in internal, and be like, we have a tight budget. We definitely, if that's the feeling of the board, because they came in and says $3 to $4 million. About 10 years ago, more or less, it was about $2 million, more or less of what we wanted to do at that time. Or at least that was what was put into the budget, I should say. Now 10 years later, or more than 10 years later, we have 3 to 4. So it's something that they will have to say, look, at some point, if you sign the proposal, when you sign the proposal, they have the goal to start working more like, in a design package, so to speak. So they're gonna come back to the board and be like, this is what we are proposing, and they'll be able to give you a little bit better understanding of what the numbers are. It may not be the $3 to $4 million.
Might not.
So until that happens,
Yeah.
the board won't know.
That's right.
So
I
to
would
me,
agree
my
with- I would
suggestion
agree with
is,
Manny. I don't think we
let's
should
get
hold
this
off.
signed
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
find out
Yeah.
what it's actually gonna be. And then you can always be like, you know what, when the drones go out to bid, or before the drones go out to bid, I'm sure Paul and Andy will be able to analyze the drones and be like, look, we really don't need this, we don't have to do this. That could be an alternate price.
Yeah,
If
put
we
an
really
and
wanna do
alternate
this.
in.
You know, if we really wanna do this, that would be an alternate price for this, you know? It's just a matter of how we're gonna use this.
And there's some logistic changes that we made
Correct.
just walking around and talking to Debbie the last few days, i.e. the offices being down here versus upstairs. I mean, that's a significant change in
Correct.
their scope. So we don't know what the significance is gonna be to their
Correct, and
cost.
again, it could be
So we have to
just
go
an
through-
alternate price for this.
Right.
We were
I mean,
talking
we're-
about, you know, abatement stuff, it could be, we don't wanna remove this, we overlay something, and that you cost right there, it was reduced by, you know, thousands of dollars.
Right.
Yeah, I don't wanna, I see no reason to delay the engineering contract. I don't know how everybody else feels, but, you know, we passed a resolution, you know, saying that we were gonna spend that money. And it's not like we're spending like $3 or $4 million next year. This is gonna take a while, and it'll allow us to be able to evaluate what's going on in this building, and this is a key structure in the village, and for the village.
We anticipated the design process to take the entire year next year
Right.
and have construction documents at the end of the year with the possible bidding at the end of 18.
And what
for-
portion of the $340,000 is that gonna take, would we spend in this year?
I forget what the
Everything
CM,
other than
the
CM,
the CM component, I forget what that was, but.
And again,
But it was in phases, it wasn't,
Correct.
you know, it was phased over time, you know, they were gonna do
Yeah.
different pieces of it, so.
So by the time budget comes in 2019, you guys, the board will have a better understanding what
Yeah.
that means.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
But I think
we
you
already,
know what you want. I think if everyone agrees that we want the elevator and we want those things happening, then we can just move
I mean,
forward.
those are key elements, and
Yep.
that's the reason why 10 years or more than 10 years ago, that was a
Right.
proposal, you know, just put an elevator. And after that, it has just morphed to something else, that functionality of the building in the next 5 to 10 years.
So we already passed the resolution to move
Yeah.
that forward. We held it up a little bit so we could have this conversation and look at it more comprehensively. And I think we've all come to the conclusion that in order to be able to make an informed decision on what we may actually want to move forward with implementing, we need to, actually now make that happen.
Will do.
Excellent.
So it's $6.5 million plus the firehouses. So let's assume it's a total of 10 million, since they all want roofs and stuff like that. Windows, roofs, and it's over a period of time. Let's call it 10 years, it's more than a year. So if I had my druthers, I would ask for drawings that look like, this is what I'd like to have, but I'd actually say, this is the amount of money I can give you, and these are my priorities. You could either do vertical, so you could either do building by building and say, this is my priority, community sec, this is priority number 2, this is priority number 3, all the firehouses are priority 4, whatever. Because otherwise, we're gonna have lots and lots of conversations on, do we need a water fountain or not?
Right.
And I don't wanna have that conversation, okay? I mean, I have opinions about everything. I don't actually think that's what we should be doing. But there are what's nice here is that there's some horizontal things. Solar, I mean, what Debbie is saying is, and look, I did my house, I had to have the roof looked at by 2 different people, and the solar company, and it's like the life of my roof, and what it costs to do a roof, and what happens when I need a new roof, I mean, cutting back the life of the roof, do solar may not be financially smart, or it may be financially, so you've got some horizontal and vertical, what I consider. This building is a gold mine, in my opinion, right? So this building can be multi-purpose rooms, taking away the burden of the community center for some meetings that are still occurring there that might occur here. Not everything has to occur there. Sometimes it's nice by redoing what you described before. Rethinking tons of bathrooms that were put in the 70s and 80s that are, in my opinion, lounge, they're just not necessary. And thinking about stuff and then saying, wait, if I'm doing this roof, can I do 4 more? So there's the building priority, and then what would bother me is to just have architects come into this building and give us hey, here's the story. Because what we saw and what they gave us in the meeting was architects. It was not the human side of anything. What we discussed on this walk was the human side of, we can have the whole meetings up here, everything else on the main floor, offices are always a problem, because once you build walls in 8 years, you're gonna find out you don't have enough office space. So most places have gone to cubicles and furniture that is movable, and it could be movable to other buildings, right? All sorts of stuff. So I think you've got an interesting start, at least from my perspective. It's really good. I would be interested in a private-public law about whether we can get corporations to participate for an exchange, because certainly colleges and high schools and state schools have done it, and they're a part of the government. So, and the thing that's not in here is the outside part. So I remember when the library went through their iterations, there was a whole lot about how landscaping is used to conserve energy. Local fauna and flora, drainage. I find way too much stonework. There seems to be a love affair in this village and town with people loving stone and concrete. And in fact, when the library went through their whole analysis being on a hill, there was a big fight to get a different way. So that's actually nowhere in here. So solar is not cheap to put in. The payoff is way out there, and the technology will change eventually. But I don't see any of that actually. It's all.
Good point.
So, and I don't think architects think about that. Okay, that's the thing that I learned when I sat in at some of those meetings that, man, it's gotta be 15 years ago, that library, that they were fighting about vegetation. And I thought it was ridiculous. Now I understand why they fought about it, to be honest with you. So things like that. And if you make this more of a public space, I don't think you have a parking issue here, but, you then have to think about the entrance, stuff like that, which I think the police departments think about. You need a desk now, not that big. So I like that, but I think it sort of is missing from a conversation and from the community center, just in the big picture. For me, it's set up incorrectly now for growth. I think the entrance is in the wrong place.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think from a security point and a children's point of view, the thing is sort of backwards in the way it's set up, and it's not designed in a friendly way. And the steps, I mean, it's almost like the entrance should have been on the other side. I think it was originally maybe even thought of, but, so it's not in a laundry list, because people walked around and said we need, but that would be the next thing, so, you know, I look forward to seeing, you know, sort of the next use of the buildings and growth, and what can be taken away would be also nice. I mean, I really would like to see half of the documents shredded and scanned first. I mean, shredded then scanned, maybe not, but I think scanned and then thrown in the garbage, so that we're not talking about 80,000 pounds and building for 80,000 pounds and building for, you know, like that
Right.
kind of,
Right.
like get rid of all that stuff, like most places have. Would be great.
Yeah, so we'll have to do our records management through the state archives.
It's great.
And they sign off on everything that we destroy, based on time schedules and, various ways of keeping it.
There's gotta be grants for this.
I was
Swear
just
to
gonna say,
God.
in fact,
There
Debbie, you and I
has
have
got
talked
to be
about that,
grants
that
for
New York
this.
State
Right.
does have a significant pool of grants for bringing records
Right.
up to date, and that's something that we could do for clerks, for police, for
Right.
buildings, so there is money for doing that. And we've been doing a fair amount of it in-house with building, and that's, you know, maybe more specialized, but there's a lot of money. In fact, Senator Carlucci, it's kind of how he started his political
Right.
career, was being the town clerk in New York City. And got grant money for that, and he'd probably be happy to help us.
And I
Grant
think
money.
it'll also offer some jobs to people who could probably use
Right.
some of these kind of jobs that are seasonal and can help them.
Right, well, Stuart sat in on a webinar for records management, so.
Multiple. There's a whole, there's either shared service grants or there's grants just for the individual municipalities. Records retention and records management tends to be the most popular one that's done. But the state has multiple. I think it's, the max is on shared services, $150,000. I think it's $75,000 for an individual municipality.
If you do that every year.
And you can, and our regional archives officer has offered to come here and, you know, go over with Debbie and me what we want to put into a grant application.
Right.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Using your terminology of horizontal, I think one of the things we definitely heard over and over again, because there is a sense of urgency to figure it out, was solar. And I'd be interested to know, right now, what are the buildings that are eligible, where that might make sense? You don't like that?
No, you know, there are universities that are doing exactly this. The state university system has to be tapped into. They are under the management of the governor's office, all the state universities. You pay tuition at the state university, you're paying it to the governor's office essentially, and if you don't pay on time, they lean on your, you know, there's a tax lien because of that. There's gotta be, because they're working on it all over the place. So, I mean, I will also do a little research. I mean, you know, I think some of us could do that, because there's gotta be work being done at universities that, you know, could be a shared learning on how to, they've got a similar issue, you know?
There was, Sustainable Westchester was reaching out to municipalities and asking them to show us your buildings, let us do an analysis for you. I don't know where they are with that. I'm looking at you because I remember it was a conversation that we had a year ago. Dana was talking about for the town, they don't really have any buildings, but there's.
What they were
That's
trying,
a
They
nice
want us to
idea.
do it.
what Sustainable Westchester did was, they wanted you to designate a building that was in a central location to explore the potential for a microgrid.
Oh, yeah, no, that was,
Yeah.
that was thinking, but they had solar stuff going on too. No, that was a different conversation.
Yeah, maybe, because
Okay.
that's not.
Okay, we'll take this, I mean, there's gotta be,
But Sustainable Westchester is like, you know, this is a big thing for them, so maybe that would be a resource, like a first phone call to say, you know, we have a lot of buildings that we own, we have a lot of rooftops that we could probably be making better use of, can you help us with that? They may have somebody that they're just
Yeah.
dying to come in and take a look and make it easy for us, and that would be a good first step.
does the school have solar panels on it?
No. And there is a state program, but it's separate for the schools.
My synagogue has. Really, it's an amazing savings.
Okay. All right, anything more that you wanted to make sure we were aware of? Okay.
No, I'm happy.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything else?
Not administrator.
Well, before we make a motion to go into executive session, did you want to comment on anything, Trustee Quesada?
Just pushing right now.
I'm just giving you the option.
So after 6 years, I said a little bit of last about 2 weeks ago. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as one of the trustees for the Village of Ossining. It was really a pleasure to be part of this, the group of people. We've done a lot. There's still a lot more to go. And I want to thank everyone that is sitting here and is watching TV or maybe watching tomorrow. Thank you for the trust that you put in on me. I hope I didn't let you down too much, at least. But I do want to thank you. And like I mentioned before, always stay involved. This is our community. This is what we do. I'm not going to go away, and I'm going to stay involved. I'll find a way. There's a lot to do in our community. So actually, I was talking to Stuart early in the week. So I'll be coming back probably in a work session at some point to do a presentation to the board. So stay tuned, I guess, for that.
Oh, that's it.
So we'll work something out. It's something that I think be kind of cool. It could be trying to involve the community in part of that, you know. So it'd be something interesting to be part of it. So stay tuned. I'm not going away. So I'll be in front of the boards. I'll be in front of coming back to the planning board to do my presentations once in a blue moon. So always stay involved in the community. Thank you so much, and happy holidays for the people who are watching. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Trustee Quesada. And yes, it is the holiday season, so everybody please be safe. Have a wonderful time. Don't spend too much time with the Austin Police Department. Keep them, unless they're offering you free coffee, you really don't want to remove them in the next couple of weeks. Yes?
Stuart, how many laws have we passed this year? What was the number?
9.
9.
So I think it's interesting that this, since it's the last time, right? Unless something comes up and we call a special meeting. So the average laws passed, well, you've been in office for 6 years, is 7, actually, with 1 year having 3 laws passed. So this board, I think, has passed the most laws, right?
Last year was at least 8, but.
Well, there are 9, I think, right?
9 is this year.
9, so but last year, I think.
That was a high year also.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to go back and
I
check.
like it though.
Yeah, so we've actually, given the fact that it's 12 months in a year, and that you need to have public meetings and all that, it is a lot, and Stuart, thank you for also helping with that. But while you've been in office, it's actually gone up. So it's a lot of work in the past, I would say, like probably 3
So
years.
next year,
3
you
or 4
guys have
years.
to top that out by at least
Yes.
2 more.
See what we can do. Well, and that's also what the
Just a
laws
lot
are
of
about.
stuff, yeah. No, no,
It's a
I
lot
mean,
of code
Yeah.
enforcement, it's a lot
Yeah.
of quality of life improvements, a lot of health and safety, and those are the ones that matter the most. So I'm really,
It's
I'm
very
really proud of a
productive.
lot of these
Yeah.
laws that we passed, and then really following through on them is the next step, so. Yes, and as Trustee Levin said, this is our last scheduled meeting of the year, although sometimes things come up.
Yep.
We have resolutions that came up just this week. If something comes up, then we'll cobble together a forum and move forward when it's necessary. But for the most part, we expect to be back on January 3rd for our reorganizational meeting. It's always a big one. Mary Ann gets a nice big glass of water, and we go through a couple dozen pages of all the information that we need for the coming year. And I also think we're going to have a lot of appointments to our volunteer boards and committees, and we're very excited about that. Are there any other final comments on this side of the table?
Happy holidays, that's it.
Yes. Do we have a motion to adjourn to executive sessions for matters of personnel related to specific persons and real property?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Please join us January 3rd at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility. Thank you very much for your 6 years of service to the village.
Thank you.
In January, we will welcome back Omar Herrera to the table.
Welcome back, yeah.
Happy New Year. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned until hopefully 2015.